This is a devastating tragedy that has befallen the Reiner family. We all recognize that. Our hearts go out to the entire Reiner family. There are very, very complex and serious issues that are associated with this case.
What if the key to understanding a brutal family murder lies in a deeper story of mental illness and addiction? Nick Reiner stands accused of violently ending his parents' lives, Rob and Michelle Reiner, two well-known Hollywood figures. But could Nick's troubled past, combined with possible mental health issues, offer an explanation for this chilling crime? Join us as we explore the legal defenses that might arise in this shocking case. The Reiner family tragedy has captured the public's attention. An acclaimed director and a renowned photographer found dead in their own home, and their 32-year-old son, Nick, charged with their murders. But could this be a simple case of familial violence? Or is there more to Nick's behavior that might change everything we thought we knew? Let's dive deeper into the evidence and potential defenses that could affect the outcome of this case. Let's start by examining the facts. Rob and Michelle Reiner were found dead in their Los Angeles home on December 14, 2025. They died from multiple sharp force injuries inflicted by a knife. Their bodies were discovered by their daughter, Romy, after they missed an appointment with a massage therapist. The timeline is chilling. Rob was found at 3:45 p.m. and Michelle a minute later. Nick's arrest took place just hours after the discovery. He was apprehended at a hotel in Santa Monica where he checked in around 4 a.m. on Sunday, December 14th, using his own credit card. This detail is potentially incriminating, especially considering he had been living in a guest house on his parents' property. Why would he leave and book a hotel at that hour? And why would he use his own credit card to do so? This is just the beginning of the unsettling timeline that raises more questions than answers. The plot thickens as reports reveal that blood was found in the hotel room, on the mattress, and in the shower. Could this be evidence of Nick attempting to clean up after the crime? The discovery of the blood adds another layer of suspicion to an already bizarre series of events. What was Nick trying to hide, and was he fleeing the scene of the crime? Things become even more intriguing when we look at surveillance footage from the night of the murders. Nick was seen walking alone at a gas station near the Reiner family home in the early hours of the morning. Later, footage shows him in a convenience store. His behavior in these moments was notably calm, which contrasts starkly with the violence he's accused of committing. Could Nick have been acting out of a sense of detachment, or was he simply covering his tracks in a calculated manner? But there's more to Nick's behavior that raises alarms. The night before the killings, Nick attended a party at Conan O'Brien's house where he reportedly acted strangely. Nick allegedly asked bizarre questions to the guests and even had a loud argument with his father. Guests said that Nick was freaking everyone out and seemed to be in a manic state. Could this erratic behavior point to something more serious, like a mental breakdown leading up to the tragic events? Let's not forget Nick's troubled history. Since the age of 15, he's been struggling with substance abuse, particularly heroin. He's openly discussed his battles with addiction, and his personal life has been marked by periods of homelessness and rehabilitation. Nick's story isn't just one of privilege, it's one of struggle and pain. Could these challenges have pushed him to a breaking point, leading to a violent confrontation with his parents? Could this be the key to understanding what happened that night? Now, let's talk about the possible legal defenses that Nick's team could use. One prominent defense would be mental illness. Reports suggest that Nick was undergoing treatment for schizophrenia at the time of the murders. Could this mental illness be the explanation for his violent actions? Is it possible that Nick wasn't fully aware of the consequences of his actions? Let's explore this defense further. Under California law, a defendant can plead insanity if they can prove they were suffering from a mental illness that prevented them from understanding the nature of their actions. For Nick's defense team to succeed with this strategy, they must show that his schizophrenia was so severe that it impaired his ability to know right from wrong at the time of the murders. But here's the catch. Insanity defenses are notoriously difficult to win. Only a small fraction of defendants who claim insanity are successful. Here's why. The actions that followed the murders are inconsistent with the behavior of someone who is completely unaware of the consequences of their actions. Nick checked into a hotel, cleaned up, and walked around in public. He acted in a coherent and purposeful manner, suggesting that he knew exactly what he was doing. If Nick truly couldn't differentiate between right and wrong due to his mental illness, would he have been capable of these rational, coherent decisions? But that doesn't mean the insanity defense is dead in the water. It's still a possibility, but the defense will need to prove beyond doubt that Nick was acting under the influence of his mental illness when he committed the murders. If they can present credible expert testimony from psychiatrists, there may be a chance that Nick's mental state will be deemed the driving factor behind the deaths. The prosecution, on the other hand, is likely to argue that Nick's actions were premeditated. The prosecution will point to the argument Nick had with his father at the party and suggest that Nick left, returned with a weapon, and carried out the murders intentionally. Under California law, this would qualify as first-degree murder. But what if the defense can argue that Nick acted impulsively, without premeditation? Could they convince the jury that this was a crime of passion, not a calculated act? Another defense strategy that might be considered is voluntary intoxication. Could Nick have been under the influence of drugs or alcohol during the murders? This could significantly impair his judgment and ability to form premeditated intent. His history of addiction could give this defense some weight, but the defense would need strong evidence to prove that Nick was intoxicated at the time of the killings. The timeline and available evidence don't strongly support this defense, making it a risky strategy for the defense team. What about self-defense? Could Nick have been defending himself when he killed his parents? Given the age difference between Nick and his parents, Rob was 78, Michelle 70, self-defense seems highly unlikely. If they weren't armed and there was no immediate threat to Nick's life, self-defense is an implausible defense. The prosecution is likely to argue that this wasn't a situation of self-defense, but rather a violent outburst driven by rage or frustration. Self-defense becomes even more difficult to argue when considering the brutal nature of the crime. The multiple stab wounds to both victims suggest that this wasn't an act of self-preservation, but one of anger. Nick's actions, returning to the house with a knife and stabbing his parents multiple times, undermine any claim of self-defense. With such a strong case against him, the defense team may try to argue for a lesser charge, such as second-degree murder. They could argue that Nick didn't plan the murders but acted in a moment of emotional turmoil. Second-degree murder carries a lesser sentence than first-degree murder, and if the defense can convince the jury that Nick wasn't acting with premeditation, they might be able to secure a conviction on a lesser charge. It's also possible that Nick's defense team will aim for a reduced sentence by citing his mental health history and struggles with addiction. While this won't necessarily change the charge, it could impact the severity of his punishment. For instance, if the jury finds that Nick's mental health issues played a role in the killings, they might opt for a sentence that offers him the possibility of parole down the line. As we continue to watch this case unfold, it's clear that the stakes are high. If convicted of first-degree murder, Nick could face life in prison without the possibility of parole. However, if his defense team is able to successfully argue that his mental illness played a significant role in the killings, they might be able to secure a lesser sentence. The death penalty, though, is unlikely to come into play given California's current moratorium on executions. In the coming weeks, as more evidence is presented and both sides make their cases, we'll see whether the defense can successfully reduce the charges or convince the jury of Nick's innocence. But with the evidence against him mounting, it's clear that Nick's defense team has their work cut out for them. As this case progresses, we'll keep you updated with all the developments. What do you think? Could Nick's mental health and troubled past be enough to change the outcome of this case? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more in-depth analysis of this shocking case.